thought for the day, brothers and sisters. Today I was reading in the book of Zechariah, chapter 4, where in verse 6 it tells us of a man by the name of Zerubbabel. God was going to use this man to help rebuild his temple. And God told him it wasn't going to be by his might or power, but by his spirit. And in life, sometimes we have to remember that whatever we do is always to the glory of God, because God, by his mercy and grace, gives us the strength and the life to do it. We live by nature self-sufficient. We want to do things our own way. We want to rule our own lives. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19, verse 14, something is said there that strikes me often. The people in Jesus' day, it is said, they didn't want him to rule over them as their king. They wanted to be king. They wanted to rule over their lives and do what they wanted. Throughout the Bible in the New Testament, you read of what's called dying to self. You often hear me quote 1 Corinthians 15, verse 31, where the Apostle Paul said that we have to die to ourselves daily. Romans chapter 6, verse 11 says that we have to die to sin in order for us to live more for Christ. Galatians chapter 2, verse 20 tells us that we are crucified with Christ, and our lives are not our own no more. We die to ourselves, and now we live for Christ more. Ephesians 4, verses 22 to 24 speaks about putting to death the old man, the old woman, the old self, in order to live for Christ more. And the Apostle Paul, once again, in Philippians chapter 3, verse 8, tells us that he considered everything in this world to be rubbish, garbage, compared to knowing the riches of Jesus Christ. The Apostle Paul learned much about dying to self because early in his life, he learned to live for himself. Everything was about him. His religious activities as a Pharisee caused him to look down at others, punish and crucify Christians and harass them until, as we read in Acts chapter 9, his road to Damascus experience, where he's kicked off his high horse, so to speak. He's blinded for 3 days, and then we're told that God would use him as an instrument of God's grace to glorify Christ and spread the gospel. That is why Paul speaks so much in these verses I just quoted about dying to self, dying to sin. Just as Zerubbabel had to be reminded in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 6, when he was preparing to build the temple, God's temple, it wasn't about his might or power, but it was because of God's Spirit. The late Billy Graham, who passed away in February of 2018, he used to say that in order to come to the beginning of God in your life, you have to come to the end of yourself. And my friends, I could tell you in a personal way, I'm learning this as I'm watching, my mother, as I've shared, and I'm thankful to God for all your prayers. She is sick in a hospital with stage 4 cancer, multiple organ cancer, and she's been fighting valiantly. But I know that it's, this life is feeble. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 6 to 8 says that the grass withers and the flower fades away, but the word of the Lord stands forever. We know that this life is temporary, but watching the suffering and the pain is what really, really bothers me. I don't question God. I really don't. I know he's in control. He does as he pleases. He don't owe us nothing. I pray for my mother immensely, and I believe that God allows us to go through suffering sometimes to really cry out to him more and more. Sometimes in our sufferings, we blame God, we get angry with God, we get angry at others, we become bitter and resentful, and we shouldn't do that. It's tempting, but we shouldn't do that. So I look at this time of this pain and suffering and this weakness, and remembering this is the woman who brought me into this earth and took care of me so well when I was young. And to see this, it's humbling. But whatever we go through in life, we have to learn to come to the end of ourselves. It's not about what we think, how we feel. It's about what God says in his word. And I'm not saying this is easy. That is why we are told, as I quoted some scriptures before, we have to die to self. We have to put to death the self, the sin, wanting to be on our own horse, so to speak, wanting to be the king of our own lives, and learning to let go and let God. I hope today's devotional video, brothers and sisters, will remind us that in life, we have freedoms, we have choices, but ultimately it is God who's in control. Proverbs chapter 16, verses 9 and 33 basically say the same thing, that we could plan our ways, but it's God who's going to direct every step. It's a mystery. The free will of man and the sovereignty of God. You know, Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 29 says that the secret things belong to God. There's things I really don't understand. We all don't understand, but God is infinite, and we have to trust him that he's working out all things according to his purpose and plan for us, and it's going to be for our good. Romans 8:28. The Lord told us in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, that he knows the plans he has for us, to prosper us, to make us better, strengthen us, give us a good life. And sometimes that good life comes with a lot of bumps and bruises and curves in the road. But I know who stands, Lord. I know the Lord stands. I know that he gives us the strength to endure. Philippians 4:13 tells us that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. God bless you all this day, my friends. I hope this video will be a blessing to you all. I pray, as for myself and for each and every one of us who see this, that we truly learn to die to self, not relying on ourselves so much, but trusting in God to direct us and guide us, not only here on earth, but forever in heaven, through Jesus Christ, his Son, our dear Lord and Savior. In his name I pray. Take care. God bless you all.